Did you know Spain has more vineyard land than any other country in the world? Yet most people can only name one or two of its wines? Prepare to be surprised, because what lies beyond Rioja and Sangria is a wine story so rich, so dramatic, and so overlooked, it might just change the way you see every glass of red, white, or bubbly. In this video, we dive into the soul of Spanish wine, a story that's 3,000 years in the making. From ancient empires to rebellious modern winemakers, Spain's wine journey is a roller coaster of secrets, science, survival, and style. Whether you're a curious beginner, a Gen Z foodie, or just someone who loves a little culture with their Cabernet, this is your all-access pass to one of the most underrated wine countries on earth. Spanish wine didn't just appear out of nowhere. Its story begins more than 3,000 years ago, when the Phoenicians, adventurous traders from the eastern Mediterranean, first arrived on Spain's southern coast. These were not just merchants, they were cultural transmitters. They didn't just exchange goods, they shared knowledge, religion, and most importantly, vines. In the sun-soaked region of Andalusia, they planted the first grapevines, transforming dry, rugged terrain into fertile wine country. For the Phoenicians, wine wasn't just a drink, it was sacred, a bridge between humans and gods. And in that sacred act of planting, Spain's wine legacy was born. As time passed, another empire rose, Rome. When the Romans conquered Hispania, they didn't just bring roads and governance. They brought serious wine culture. Vineyards flourished under Roman control, as wine became both a staple and a status symbol. The Romans built infrastructure to move wine efficiently across the empire, from Hispania to the far corners of Britain and the Middle East. Amphorae, clay vessels used to store and transport wine, bearing marks from Spanish producers, have been found as far away as Gaul and Rome itself. To sip Spanish wine in ancient times was to taste a prized export of the Roman world. Spain wasn't just producing wine, it was producing wine worth talking about. But history is never a straight line. In 711 AD, everything changed. The Moors, Muslim conquerors from North Africa, swept across the Iberian Peninsula. Under Islamic rule, alcohol was forbidden by law, and much of Spain's wine production came to a halt. Vineyards were destroyed or repurposed. Some were kept only to produce raisins or grape juice. Others were left to wither in the sun. The golden age of Roman wine culture seemed all but lost. And yet it wasn't. Because deep in the hills and behind monastery walls, Christian monks quietly defied the odds. They understood that wine was more than a beverage. It was spiritual, symbolic, and deeply embedded in Christian rituals like the Eucharist. These monks kept the old vines alive and secretly passed down their winemaking skills from generation to generation. In their cloisters, wine was still pressed, aged, and consumed, though now more as a sacred act than a social one. Like a hidden manuscript waiting to be discovered, the wine tradition in Spain survived through faith, persistence, and patience. This underground effort wasn't just a religious ritual, it was cultural resistance, a silent rebellion in barrels and bottles. Thanks to these unsung heroes of viticulture, Spain's winemaking tradition didn't die. It matured, it adapted, waiting in the shadows for its moment to rise again. And when that moment came, Spanish wine would return with even more depth, complexity, and soul. Just like a bottle that had been aging in the dark, quietly growing into greatness. The wine reawakens, from the Reconquista to royal tables. When Christian forces reclaimed Spain during the Reconquista, the vineyards were reborn. Monasteries didn't just make wine again, they elevated it. By the Middle Ages, Spain was exporting wines like sherry to England, the Netherlands, and beyond. Kings and queens were toasting victories with Spanish vintages. In fact, sherry became so popular that Shakespeare mentioned it in his plays. That's right, Falstaff was a fan. France's tragedy, Spain's triumph. Now jump to the 19th century. French vineyards were being destroyed by a tiny pest called phylloxera. Whole regions were devastated. In desperation, French winemakers turned to Spain. They brought with them cutting-edge ideas, oak aging, cellar innovations, and better vineyard techniques. Spanish regions like Rioja and Catalonia exploded in quality. Tempranillo found its soulmate in American oak. Winemaking was transformed. It's the wine world's version of turning lemons into lemonade, or in this case, crisis into Cabernet. A century of struggle and survival. The 20th century was rough. Civil war, dictatorship, and decades of global isolation put Spanish wine on pause. While France and Italy modernized, Spain was left behind. But vines are resilient, and so are winemakers. When Spain joined the EU in 1986, a new wave began. Investments flowed in. Forgotten regions were revived. Technology merged with tradition. Spain's wine scene went from sleeping giant to global powerhouse. Fast. Spain's unique aging system, wine with a resume. Spanish wines don't just have age, they have qualifications. Meet the classification ladder. Joven, young wines meant to be drunk fresh. Light, fruity, and easy drinking. Crianza, aged at least 2 years, with 6 months in oak. Balanced and approachable. Reserva, minimum 3 years of aging, 1 in oak. Smooth, deep, and dinner party ready. Gran Reserva, aged 5+ years. Complex, elegant, and built to impress. This system, especially prominent in Rioja and Ribera del Duero, is like giving every bottle a resume. You know exactly what you're getting. Spain's iconic wine regions. A guided tour. Rioja, Spain's superstar. Rioja isn't just famous, it's foundational. Located in northern Spain, it's Tempranillo's kingdom. Expect red cherry, tobacco, leather, and American oak spice. But Rioja is not just one thing. Rioja Alta, elegant, age-worthy. Rioja Alavesa, floral and fresh. Rioja Oriental, juicy and fruit-forward. It's also home to Spain's most famous Gran Reservas. Basically, Rioja is the Beyoncé of Spanish wine. Classic, versatile, and iconic. Ribera del Duero, the powerhouse. Further west along the Duero River lies Ribera. Here, Tempranillo becomes Tinto Fino, and it's all about strength. High-altitude vineyards equals bold wines with black fruit, chocolate, and serious structure. These wines age beautifully and are beloved by collectors and sommeliers alike. Priorat, Spain's rock star, literally. Its famous Licorella soil is full of slate and quartz, producing wines that are earthy, mineral, and intense. Garnacha and Cariñena shine here. Priorat wines are dark, deep, and soulful. They don't whisper, they roar. Rías Baixas, the cool coastal queen. On Spain's misty northwest coast, Albariño reigns. It's crisp, citrusy, and saline, like a sea breeze in a bottle. These wines are perfect with seafood, sunny patios, or anytime you want to feel like you're on a yacht. Jerez, home of sherry. Sherry is misunderstood. People think it's sweet, old-fashioned, or boring. But real sherry, from bone-dry Fino to rich Pedro Jimenez, is complex, wild, and full of surprise. Its Solera aging system blends different vintages for unmatched depth. Think of it as wine's answer to time travel. Penedès, the sparkling star. Near Barcelona, Penedès is the heartland of Cava, Spain's sparkling wine. Made with native grapes in the same traditional method as champagne, Cava is toasty, crisp, and criminally underpriced. Seriously, $15 gets you bubbles that punch way above their weight. Navarra, Toro, Bierzo, Jumilla, La Mancha. These lesser-known regions are Spain's rising stars. They're producing amazing wines at incredible value. Navarra, bold rosés and modern reds. Toro, powerful Tempranillo with spice. Bierzo, elegant Mencía with floral finesse. Jumilla, bold Monastrell that thrives in the heat. La Mancha, Europe's biggest wine region, now reinventing itself with fresh modern wines. Spain's star grapes, a symphony of flavor. Spanish wine owes much of its identity to its diverse and expressive grape varieties. Among red grapes, Tempranillo stands as Spain's noble variety, structured, versatile, and age-worthy. Found in regions like Rioja and Ribera del Duero, it produces wines layered with red cherry, tobacco, and gentle spice. Whether young and fruity or aged into complexity, Tempranillo remains the cornerstone of many of Spain's finest reds. Then comes Garnacha, or Grenache, a grape that brings warmth and bold fruit to both reds and roses. Grown across Aragon and Catalonia, Garnacha is juicy, spicy, and full of sun-drenched charm. It's equally compelling solo or in blends, adding richness and approachability. Monastrell, dominant in southeastern Spain, delivers bold, rustic wines packed with blackberry pepper and earth. This heat-loving grape thrives in dry, rocky soils, making it a favorite for lovers of full-bodied reds. Meanwhile, Mencía, mostly found in Bierzo and Galicia, is a more delicate expression. Light-bodied with floral aromas and bright red fruit, Mencía offers a refreshing contrast, elegant, mineral-driven, and increasingly trendy. Supporting grapes like Cariñena, Carignan, and Bobel play roles too. Cariñena adds acidity and structure, especially in blends from regions like Priorat. Bobel, native to eastern Spain, produces deeply colored, fruit-forward wines that are gaining popularity for their rustic charm and excellent value. Spain's white grapes are just as captivating. Albariño, the star of Rías Baixas, is zesty and aromatic, often carrying notes of lime, peach, and sea spray. Its natural acidity and saline finish make it a perfect match for seafood and warm weather sipping. Another standout is Verdejo, grown in Rueda. Often compared to Sauvignon Blanc, it delivers citrusy, herbal wines with a touch of bitterness on the finish. Crisp, food-friendly, and increasingly popular. The grapes behind Cava, Macabeo, Xarel-lo, and Parellada form a powerful trio in Spain's sparkling wine scene. Together, they create crisp, floral, and layered sparkling wines that rival champagne in quality at a fraction of the cost. And in the fortified wine world, Palomino is key. While mild on its own, it becomes extraordinary when aged into sherry, developing nutty, salty, and oxidative notes that showcase Spain's technical brilliance. Altogether, Spain's native grapes tell a story of heritage, resilience, and creativity. Each variety contributes its own voice to the country's rich wine narrative, making every glass a tasting of Spain's diverse terroir and timeless passion. Spain's wine culture. Fun facts and food pairings. Spain has more vineyard land than any other country, over 950,000 hectares. Some of its vines are over 100 years old, especially in Galicia and Priorat. Spain exports wine to 150-plus countries. It's everywhere. Sherry's Solera system blends multiple vintages together over years. Cava uses the same method as champagne, but costs a fraction of the price. Spanish wines are made for food. Pair Rioja Reserva with Manchego, Albariño with grilled octopus, or sherry with tapas. And let's not forget the festivals. Like the Rioja Wine Harvest Festival, a week-long party where grapes are stomped, wine flows freely, and the streets come alive with tradition and celebration. So next time you're standing in front of the wine shelf or browsing your favorite app, skip the obvious choices. Pick up a bottle of Spain, because when you drink Spanish wine, you're not just sipping alcohol, you're sipping a story, one that's ancient and modern, resilient and rebellious, familiar yet full of surprises. Subscribe to the channel for more stories hidden in the vines. Comment below, what Spanish wine are you most curious to try? Like if you've learned something new, and share this with a fellow wine lover. Until next time, keep exploring, keep sipping, and remember, the best wine stories are the ones still being written.